Chris, I have the privilege of knowing you very well and loving you very much, and I know that this vision of second wave spirituality that you're giving comes out of profound personal suffering, and also out of the revelation that real agony in really terrifying historical circumstances gave you. And I would like you to share with us your childhood and your experience in Beirut, and your experience of leading the peace movement in Beirut when you were only 14 and 15, and what you discovered from this extraordinary experience, because I think it has universal relevance, and it is the experience that you had there that gave birth to this vision that I think is going to have an immense impact on everyone.
You know, I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. I was born in a Christian family in Lebanon. And at a very young age, I got involved in a peace-building movement in Lebanon, and I became one of the leaders of it. It was a small Christian peace movement, but it was very active. I was very, very blessed to be with people who really wanted to make a difference. And so we worked in a lot of refugee camps. We worked in the border villages that were under fire from both the Israelis and Palestinians and things like that. And so I worked with that movement for about 7-8 years, and then when I was 21, the war broke out in Lebanon. And it was a very devastating war, And I saw a level of suffering and a level of affliction that I could not even imagine. Both on a personal level, our family, we lost everything. We were taken for hostages for a while. But at a larger level, the suffering that happened, Beirut was destroyed 3 times. And I used to go to hospitals, both Christians and Muslims, and see the children that were suffering, the children that lost limbs because of the madness of the war itself, and seeing agonies and people suffering with no financial support, medicine not being able to get to them, and have to go through that without even painkillers. And it was incredibly heart-wrenching. 2 things from that experience. One was that I realized what you teach so beautifully, Andrew, that whenever there is a brokenness like that, whenever there is pain like that, if we really listen, what we see is the emergence of divine love and divine power to meet that crisis. That it is an initiation.
They come together.
Exactly. And one story was at a time where there was a truce for a couple of days. So we had, by that time, had lost everything, and the buildings that we owned were taken. But I rushed to go to one of the buildings that we had to see what happened to it, and it was burned and destroyed.
The whole thing had been devastated.
And it was devastated and taken over and so forth. And so I went to that building and I climbed the stairs. It was like a 13 level building, and I climbed and I saw it like burned and all of that. And I reached on top and I looked at Beirut, and Beirut, the lights were off and you could see the smoke, and my heart just broke. And I really felt that at that moment that I couldn't take it anymore, that I was going to collapse.
You really wanted to die at that moment. You wanted to be taken out of this horrific experience.
Please, God.
You felt that you couldn't bear it anymore. And there are so many people all over the world right at this moment feeling that.
Exactly.
In Africa, in the hellholes of the world.
Exactly.
And so many people waking up to a terrible crisis feeling that.
Exactly. Oh my God.
What happened to you?
Well, at that moment I started feeling dizzy, I started feeling weak, I started kind of saying, God, take me. I mean, if that's what's happening, just take me. And then as I was going down, kind of feeling weaker and weaker, I heard that voice in me that said, there is a spirit in you that of course is given from the divine and comes from the divine, but there is a spirit in you that is greater than the war and all the destruction of the war. And all of a sudden I felt a strength and a love beyond what I even knew was available, and I truly felt that there was a love that I could access in the depth of my being that is greater than all the hatred, and a power that could access that could challenge all the principalities that are pushing the ideas of war and control and destruction. And I started burst into singing and burst into praise.
Wow.
And here I was trembling, but yet praising. And that experience stayed with me forever, realizing that this is not only about destruction. This is, like you say, an initiation, a time of birth, a pregnancy that is leading us toward a new birth.
So at the very moment of the deepest suffering of your life,
Yes.
you discovered in a way that you had never discovered before the
Yes.
magnificence of your divinely given spirit. And you
Exactly.
discovered this with an intensity that flooded your whole being with a new kind of power.
Yes.
And this was the clue for you,
Yes.
for what you have worked on for the last 40 years,
Yes.
on the psychological and spiritual ways
Very much
of
so.
really incarnating this power in such a way that people can become humbly inspired by it to join together to save the planet and themselves.
Yes, that we I needed to realize, and I believe we need to realize, that we have in us a spirit given by the divine that is able to counter all the forces of destruction with love.
Right.
And that we have that power to respond. Of course, we have frailties too, and we
Of
have
course, and
shadows
and ego
and lacks, but we also have a spirit of the divine. But the other thing also, the other part of that clue was that when that made me decide to stay in Lebanon for 7 years and work in the peace movement. But when I left,
Right.
and I went to the West, and I heard so much spiritual teaching about the suffering of the world being an illusion,
Right.
about that, the world doesn't
Oh,
matter, what
God.
matters is personal peace, and then, whatever is ethereal, but all that suffering is not our work. That broke my heart again.
Right, because you were broken by the indifference to the suffering of the world that this pseudo-spirituality of the New Age has made so prevalent.
And to realize that the love of the divine is boundless, it's unbounded.
Right.
It is, of course, for my family and for my beloved friends, but it is for every child that is suffering.
Right.
Black, white, yellow, it is for every people that are under the shackles of abject poverty.
Yes.
The love of the divine doesn't stop at the
private
doors of our homes.
Of course not. But it's not just that, because I've heard you say, and I think it's one of the most moving aspects of your teaching, and I believe it to be true and to be the core of what you're saying. It's not only that the divine love is boundless and extends to everyone, including the oppressed. It is something you glimpsed in Beirut. The
Yes.
divine love was most present with the broken and the
Exactly.
poor and the dispossessed
Exactly.
and the shattered. It's most attentive to that. So if you have any kind of claim to be a true seeker, a truly devoted seeker and lover of the beloved, your whole love should be focused on being a voice for the voiceless, a champion for the oppressed, and that the spirituality that says that the world is an illusion and suffering is an illusion is a spirituality that actually conspires with the forces of destruction that are now devastating our planet.
And that's what second wave spirituality is doing.
Right.
It is rewriting theology.
Right.
And that's what your measure of sacred activism is doing to us.
Right.
It is making us re-understand the depth of love and how love relates to the world.
And this was the gift of the horror of Beirut to you.
Yes.
The brutality that you experienced was what made you absolutely sensitive both to the agony of what you suffered in Beirut, but also to this revelation.
Yes.
And one of the greatest aspects of second wave
It
spirituality,
broke my heart open, right?
Right. And one of the things that you teach so beautifully, and it's so moving, is the way in which your wounds become a door
Yes.
into service.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Our wounds become the womb of love in action.
Yes.
Of the epic call to love.